Good evening, everybody. My name is Lakeisha Holiday, and I am the owner of I've Got This Eduprice LLC, which is an educational consulting firm that brings awareness to the invaluable contributions of classified staff, as well as creating professional development resources for them. And as you all know, Educhats is a virtual platform that we have recently launched in which we connect with education advocates that are current or former education employees or again advocates to gauge their perspective on what exactly the contribution of classified out of classroom student support staff means to them. And today I have a very special guest who is also a friend of mine. We've been friends for about 10 or 11 years. Kendall McDowell, and him and I were talking offline, and I was sharing with him this, but I had not shared it with him because I wanted to share it once we started recording, just to get his authentic feedback, which I thought I was going to get anyways. But a lot of people know Kendall for his ingenious musical abilities. He is definitely an anointed young man who uses the gospel of Jesus Christ to evangelize through music with his group Raw, Kendall McDowell and Raw. Shameless plug, go search their music once you're done listening to this. But when I first met Kendall was in high school and he was immersed in the world of education and politics. And although, again, he's known for his music, that's not the full spectrum of how I met him. He was involved in music when I first met him, but he was always in an extracurricular activity, student-led associations at school. He went out to college and did some amazing things. If I'm not mistaken, he was either a double major or majored and minored in while he was during his tenure at a university here in North Carolina. And some of the conversations that we've had over the years have not always been about music, have not always been about family, but have been about politics and education. And in fact, he was the one that encouraged me to go after my current role as a youth development coordinator. And I'm not sure if he remembers that, but I remember I used to be a volunteer for Girl Scouts of America. And my particular troop would lead clubs in the school that he was working in at that time as a student support staff individual. And he encouraged me to go after this role. And I said, well, no, friend, I don't meet the qualifications. I didn't have my degree at that time. And I would say within a year and a half after him encouraging me to pursue that and the opportunity coming available, I did, and I ended up getting the position. So I thought that this would be a wonderful platform just to have some dialogue with him concerning, again, the contributions of classified staff. And although he is not working for the respective school districts any longer, he does have that experience of what it is like to operate in that role. And as you all know, I always make sure that I express that the views and the opinions of any of the contributors, myself included, expressed here are those of our own. They in no way, shape, or form reflect any district that we may have been affiliated with in the past or are currently affiliated with now, And so before we get into the Q&A, well, not really Q&A, but just the dialogue portion, I'll have Kendall give a brief introduction about himself. If it's too much of a pressure, Kendall, just let me know. We'll go ahead and get right into the questions. But the floor is all yours.
Okay, wow. Thank you, Lakeisha. I'm honored to be here. So thank you for thinking of me to be a part of this. This is awesome. I am a huge advocate for student support services. I've been in that industry now for about 8 years total. Started out as a group leader, working directly with children for about 3 years in the school district that Lakeisha was referring to back home in North Carolina. I did that for 3 years while I was in college, pursuing a political science and history degree. And I always knew that I would be in education, knew that I would end up in some way, shape, or form in that industry. Just didn't really know in what level of impact that I would do that. And I remember close to graduating with my undergrad, I had a pretty hard decision to make. At the time, I was coming up on being able to I was finishing up some classes that would have allowed me to go into the school system as a civics and economics teacher. And I ended up declining that opportunity because I ended up getting an opportunity to get promoted working for the same organization I was working for in the county, and working as a actual site coordinator. So I decided to take that position, one, because I absolutely loved what I did as a group leader, and two, because I just saw there was a certain level of impact that I wanted to make in, obviously this is school age children, so lower schools. There was a certain level of impact that I wanted to make in the lives of youth that I knew I couldn't make in academia. Um, in academia, it's a different world. There are different goal sets. There's a completely different projection. Just the entire spirit of what you do working in the academic world is just completely different. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Every area has its place. But for me, I knew that student support was where I wanted to be because I wanted to make an impact in the lives of young people, particularly African Americans. And I'm not sure if if your organization caters to a certain demographic or if it just caters to all, but for me, I saw a need and I wanted to seize it. And for me at the time, the need was definitely in the African American community. So I decided to stay there and do that. And I elevated to a site coordinator, did that for 5 years. And long story short, now I'm actually in higher education and I work actually in the same vein of student support, but I operate as what we call a success coach. And I help navigate graduate level students in their academic careers while they're enrolled at the university that I work for.
That is amazing. And one of the areas that you highlighted was the impact. And I think that is so worth speaking about now because as critical and as essential, that word essential is being thrown around a lot, especially with COVID-19. Everything is essential versus non-essential. But as essentially critical as the impact is, especially in Title I schools and dealing with student demographics where the poverty rate is at least 51% or higher. And, you know, well, that phrase, that's free or reduced lunch, but you know that those are your schools where poverty is a concern, a cause for concern, or an issue of concern, I'm sorry. With the level of impact that stands to be made with student support staff to that of the development of the whole student, you would think that there would be more professional development opportunities available to us. Unfortunately, right now, it is not. I don't believe that it will always be like that, but that is the reality. And so just speaking from your experience, whether it is your current experience or it more leans towards your past experience, did you feel like you had to advocate for yourself when it came to developing who you were professionally, or were you privy to some resources that allowed you to not have to look so hard for development opportunities?
Yeah, so for me, I think I was probably extremely blessed. I worked with a lady that I consider my mentor for those 3 years as a group leader. And so I was able to see her in action, and she gave me a lot of leadership opportunity while I was there with her. And so I would say my growth in terms of being prepared professionally probably came from the opportunity to glean and grow from her because I saw her doing the position that I knew I wanted to do. So I followed in her footsteps for the most part. It wasn't difficult for me. Now, of course, I had to find my own flavor. I had to find my own swag, you know, and that came with time. And that also came with me knowing my students. because I think a big part of this position is, of course, we believe that in order to be a successful student support service provider, you have to be compassionate. So there is a certain level of authenticity that is really demanded when you're in a position like this. But I think too, there's some acting that you have to do too. And what I mean by that is acting, not meaning that you're exposing a side of you that isn't authentic or that isn't real. But there are some days, I can just recall some days that I would step up into my position and I couldn't relate to the students. I couldn't relate to them. And to be honest with you, Lakeisha, I think that's actually one of the reasons why I felt, compelled to this particular position, because I was, I didn't have the story as a lot of my students of, growing up without their father, living in a home, low income home. I didn't have those things stacked against me. I think what fueled me for wanting to be of service to youth like that was the fact that I knew I was privileged.
Right.
And so for me, I knew what it took for me to not enter into that societal trajectory that is over the lives of so many young Black people, Black youth particularly. So I knew that I needed to be an example. I needed to be that light for them to see that there is a better way. I know that, there's everything's stacked against you, according to, the trajectory that society has predicted for you. It obviously isn't the most positive path, but there is a way out. There is another way. So I wanted to be able to demonstrate that. So there were days that I stepped up and I didn't know the answer. I didn't know how to navigate them through certain situations, but I had to dig deep within myself and find a way to relate to the student so that I could be more effective in serving them.
That's wonderful. And one thing that you said that I can relate to is that relational piece. I know a lot of times we live in a society where people say, well, you don't know what I've been through. You don't know what it's like. It's easy for you to say because you haven't been through X, Y, and Z. But when you, as a mentor, as a volunteer, as support staff, even if you're a classroom teacher, in whatever capacity you have to have a hands-on, a hands-on level of engagement with the student in some way, I think that if you know how to use your compassion along with your positive experiences, you can still provide that hope to someone that, yes, although I may not have been through the things that you have, you haven't been through the things that I've experienced. And so allow me to show you what the positive experiences are, especially being that you're used to an environment that is negative. And that is very critical in there's a study that came out a little over 10 years ago called the ACEs study. It's the Adverse Childhood Experience Study. And it's a trauma-based study where doctors, two individuals got together and said, if a child experiences these types of traumas, they're prone to disease, they're 7 times, 12 times more likely to commit suicide, to become addicted to drugs, to be incarcerated, and a lot of that was tailored to the minority community. And so you and I both have the experience of working in those life demographics. And so one of the areas that the doctors highlight is that you're able to turn that around for a child when through a positive mentoring relationship. All it takes is just a relationship of one positive adult to be consistent in their life to start reversing what those statistics are that they're already up against. And so, again, the child's response may be, well, Miss Holiday, Mr. McDowell, you don't know what I've been through. And our response can be, you don't know what I've been through, but I'm not going to tell you that, but let me show you in the consistency of my relationship with you and the consistency of me reaching out to you and the consistency of me going above and beyond what my pay grade is and what my job description is, because I know that it's going to take more than that to compel you and to put you in a space that says I can do better, I can dream bigger, I can achieve even greater than I dream. And so I wanted to go into the next question and just kind of deviating from the script or the list of questions that I could possibly pull from that I sent you before, because I just really love the flow of the conversation. But was there an individual in your school, in your time of going to school, growing up, that was a standout person to you, that was somebody beyond the classroom? And if not, that's okay. But was there anyone like that for you?
One of the most impactful experiences that I had from a leader while I was in school, and it really goes with what you were just saying about, we may not be able to understand or relate to what a student has been through or even what they're going through. But one thing I used to always do in our staff prep meetings when I was working back in North Carolina, I would always tell my staff, our responsibility is not to define what a student has been through or what they're going through. Our responsibility is to speak to who they're becoming. That's it. And so one of the most impactful lessons that I learned from a mentor while I was in school, his name was Mr. Mitchell. And I worked very closely with him with the African American Male Leadership Summit when I was, I think it was junior year of high school. And this man was amazing, older guy, just full of life, very smart, intelligent, man of wisdom. And he took me under his wing for a few years while I was there in high school, saw something in me that I didn't see within myself, and was able to literally help me define my why and my identity. And when I say why, I mean, two things: my contribution, what is it that I have to offer the world, and then my impact. Like, how is it that what I have to offer, at what level will that impact the people that I'm assigned to? And so he helped me discover that. I remember that there were, growing up, but this would have been right before you met me, because I think when you and I met, I might have had already transitioned to another school, another high school. But prior to that, I was a very quiet guy, didn't really have a lot of certainty around my future and what I wanted to do. I was a privileged kid. So, for me, I was really spoiled, for lack of a better word. I was spoiled. So for me, it was just like, I'm gonna wake up, go to school. My parents always told me, make good grades. I did it, but I didn't have any ambition. I had no motivation for life. I just was living. And I remember my parents were able to identify with that. And they were like, you know what, we're not going to allow you to go down the same path that we did. My parents knew that there was a point in their life where, they just kind of got comfortable in complacency. And so life was a byproduct of that. If their future was a byproduct of that. So they saw that on me and immediately started immersing me into environments and spaces that were able to bring things out of me that I didn't know existed. And Mr. Mitchell was one of those guys. He helped. I always say he saw it, he seized it, and then he shaped it. So like, he saw what I could be. He saw the potential that was in me. He seized that opportunity, and then he helped shape me into that. He wasn't concerned about, my past, or, how smart I was, or how great my grades were, or any of that. He wasn't, impressed by me in any shape or form. His assignment in my life was focused on who I was becoming. And so he helped me become the person that I had no idea was there. But it was through his mentorship, through his guidance, through his example, through the time that he gave to me. That was another big piece for me. He gave me so much of himself, so much of his time. I would spend hours with him. during the day over the summers. And I didn't have to. I go sit with him at his office, and there wasn't a lesson plan or questions that he had prepared for me or nothing. It was just literally me sitting, being in the same environment as him, gleaning from him, watching him, observing him. All of those components is what really helped shape me into who I am today. So yeah.
And that really goes along the lines of, I know when you and I were coming through school, the whole concept of social emotional learning was not as, it wasn't such a widely discussed, heavily discussed topic within education as it is now. But that's essentially what it was. He was able to connect with you through a social emotional learning based approach by building that rapport, building that relationship in a way that it's impacted you years beyond the immediate interaction with him.
Absolutely.
And I think that fully captures, again, the professional and the personal perspective of just how valuable student support staff is. I love classroom teachers. I have about 2 or 3 standout teachers from my K-12 time in school that I still am, well, one I'm still in contact with to this day. We're Facebook friends. And my first grade teacher, she even sent me a picture that I colored for her in first grade, long time ago. But as impactful as she is, I still can't help but to remember the relationship that I formed with the teacher assistants and the custodial staff, and office staff persons, and even individuals outside of the school that were connected to the school in some way, whether it was at a rec center or I used to be a Pop Warner cheerleader, and a lot of the cheerleading and football coaches had an affiliation with the local schools in the area. So it definitely takes a village to raise a child. And I mentioned that on my last Educhats with my last contributor. And that village, that saying is more than just within your home. It's in every aspect of the child. And so I thank you for offering your perspective. And I learned some new things about you. I have to go back and replay it. I didn't want to keep incidents, but I didn't know the full extent as to how you were, the different initiatives you were involved in high school and college. So I'm even more grateful that I had you on today as a contributor. And I know this platform is not about music or anything, but if there's anything that you want to share concerning some upcoming projects, or you want to share with our listeners and viewers how they can stay connected to you, the floor is all yours.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I'm not going to take this opportunity to plug my music career, but I appreciate it. But no. You already did that for me at the beginning of the show. I appreciate that. But no, I mean, you can follow me on social media. I don't think I can add any more people on Facebook, but I'm on Instagram at Kendall_RAW. And I'm pretty active on social media. You can reach out to me. Like I said, I've been working in student support now for long time, and I particularly have a heart for young people. I'm not in that place right now because God has put me in another position where I'm able to actually help adults, but I still believe in the advising, advocation, and assistance piece that comes along with student support, and that's why I exist. Partially why I exist. So I appreciate you for this time.
Absolutely. Well, I thank you all for tuning in, for watching. And if you have not already, well, if you're watching this video, you have, but I would encourage you to share with others the opportunity that is found in subscribing to the virtual community so that you can continue to receive the digital recordings through your email and all of our future endeavors. lost my train of thought. So that is the website is www.igcedutrise.com. And again, this has been another Educhat through. I've got this. What is the name of my business? I've got this enterprise. Oh my gosh, LLC. Bye.